Hello and welcome to the Magical Midlife Podcast, where you get a refreshing, uplifting and optimistic perspective on life in your 40s and 50s. I'm your host, Lindsay DeSwart, and I'm delighted that you've joined us here today, so let's jump right in. Hello, and welcome to today's lovely episode of the Magical Midlife. Thank you for coming back and joining us again. Today, I am interviewing a very special lady called Tracy Bowen. And Tracy is an entrepreneur, and we've been in the same network for quite some time now. And Tracy is absolutely a perfect example of walking the magical midlife. So today, I'm going to ask Tracy to tell us all about it. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent. Not as excited as I am because I want to know the details.
Well, there's the good, the bad, the ugly, and the reemergence.
Fantastic. Love it all. Good. Right. Well, sounds like we've got a good one on our hands today. Awesome. So, Tracy, please can you give us a little bit of background of, let's say, chapter 1 of Tracy?
My goodness, I feel like I've had a million chapter ones, to be perfectly honest. Up to a few years ago, even say 10 years ago, I was, what I would consider a traditional woman with a traditional life, although I've been told that that's not exactly accurate. I was in a long-term relationship. I was raising stepchildren. I had the perfect house with the perfect everything. And yet I was miserable.
I was going to say, how was that working out for you?
Yes, did not work out so well for any of us. Truth be told, I was making him miserable. He was making me miserable. And God knows I was making the stepchild miserable.
Right.
Because there was no joy in that for me. And I was really following what I felt society had laid out for me. Yeah. Very passionate about my career. I had always been a career person. And I followed that for well over 2.5 decades. Until one day I woke up and said, okay, enough of being miserable in this life that from the outside looks so perfect.
Wow.
And it was an awakening for me. And I came home that night and I said to my now ex-partner, because we were in the process of selling our wonderful home and moving to an even more wonderful home. And I just said, I'm not coming. And he said, thank God, because I don't want you to.
Oh my goodness, to be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
It was so wonderful because I think we both just felt this tremendous sense of relief.
Yeah.
That it was really that simple to just say, this is not working. I am not happy. You are not happy. We need to make some changes. And we had already tried, the counseling and all that stuff. And at our core, we are just very different people. Mm-hmm. And to this day, we are better friends now than we were the 12 years that we lived together. We had what was potentially the most amicable breakup. Mm-hmm. We wrote our separation agreement on a napkin over chicken wings at the local pub.
Perfect.
And have my next door neighbor sign it. It was super simple. She was like devastated, and we're like, oh no, this is a really good thing. We just need a witness. It's all good.
Wow.
And so I packed up all my stuff and I moved cities because I wanted to reestablish who Tracy was without being Tracy and fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I'll protect his anonymity because he's probably dying if he ever knew that we were talking about this right now. So I'll apologize in advance, hon, but it is what it is.
Fair enough. And so how long ago was that?
That was 2015. At the time I had a super thriving direct sales business, mm-hmm. which was fantastic. I had that flexibility to go anywhere that I wanted to go. So I packed up my stuff and I moved 2 hours away so that I could literally start over again. And I started, and then a year later I lost that business when the company closed.
Ah.
And so now I was 50 and a bit, no business, no visible means of support, and single, going, hallelujah, geez, what a great day this is.
Yeah.
But I believe in gifts and I believe in messages from the beyond. And that day was May 24th. And that is the day that my mom passed 16 years ago. And she always sends a message on that day. There's always a message. And I woke up that day, and it was the first time in, I think it was 11 years at that point. It was the first time that I had woken up on the anniversary of her death, and I didn't feel that heavy weight,
really,
of remembrance.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe my journey to healing is really kind of taking hold. And then 2 hours later, I lost a multi-million-dollar business. So, thanks, Mom. Appreciate your timing.
Yeah.
And so I had to reinvent myself again. And so I went back into the corporate world. And, there's a lot of aspects that I love about corporate. I love the structure. I love teammates and working together in a group. But there's also a lot of stuff that after 9 years of being an entrepreneur are very hemmed in and very restrictive.
So what was the toughest thing to go back to?
Getting other people's approval in order to implement an idea that is going to work because you've done it before.
Yeah.
And getting it past, 17 layers of management approval, or probably wasn't 17, it just felt like 17.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sure felt like it though.
Yeah. And, those kinds of things get easier over time because you just become reaccustomed to the new normal. But I was commuting again, and it was, a 2 to 3 hour commute each way.
Yeah.
And I totally lost my autonomy and my identity again.
Right.
And so, I kind of went on this internal soul searching of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And yet at the same time thinking, you're almost an old lady. Like you're in your 50s now. Like you should know already. And I didn't. I clearly did not know. I was really just struggling. And so I left there and I went and did a contract position that, again, it filled the wallet, but it didn't fill the soul. And so I did that only for a very short period of time. And then I literally took a sabbatical for close to 7 or 8 months to just sit and be, because I realized I had not done that since I was 19 years old. Just sit and just think, what do you want to do? And I realized that my entire life had been wrapped up in, I identified myself by what I did, much like men traditionally do.
Well, yeah, much like so many people do, and which is why redundancy is such a crisis for so many people. You can say, well, you can just go and get another job. But as you say, it's about way more than that, because you identify yourself as being that person.
Exactly. And, and that was a struggle for me, even when I left, because while I was still with my previous partner, I had been a corporate employee for 19 years and I loved it. But, the situation changed and I left that corporation and became an entrepreneur. And so the struggle is the same, no matter which direction you're going. It's literally trying to identify who you are, what you want, and then finding things that fill that.
Yeah, good point.
As opposed to, well, I'll take this and I'll find myself along the way. If you're really truly searching for joy that, is an inside job, as they say, you have to go the other direction. And sometimes you have to make some pretty nasty sacrifices, which I've done over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
But for me, flexibility was the single biggest thing. I love working with other women. I love seeing them succeed. And that gives me more joy than succeeding myself. And so, I packed up again. I woke up. I do things rather spontaneously, as you may know, Lindsay.
Yes, I've noticed.
Yes. So in October of 2019, I woke up one day in my beautiful executive townhome in Guelph, Ontario, and said, "You need to sell this house."
Oh,
Like I just literally woke up that day and I went, "Well, I'm not sure who's talking to me, but every time I've ignored that voice, it has not worked out well for me."
yeah, fair
So
enough.
now I follow the voice. And so I listed my house and I sold it within 24 hours, which was a little bit of a surprise.
Mm.
And I had 30 days to get out and find a new home um, and move. And so, everything else went on hold. I don't know how often you've moved. I tend to be a little bit transient because I do love a new adventure. I'm one of those strange people that likes going to a new city and finding new things that I didn't even know existed before and meeting wonderful people.
Yeah, apparently I choose to go to new countries.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
neither is an easy choice.
No, they're not easy, but there's sure a path of self-discovery along the way.
I was going to say, and yet an adventure. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Throw yourself into a new adventure and off you go. But as you say, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
No, it was not easy. I decided that I was going to move to London. I have some friends here. And
London, Ontario, let's just be clear.
Yes, London, Ontario,
okay, yeah.
not London, England. Although that is where my family is from, in that neck of the woods.
Okay.
And so I arrived here on December the 19th of 2019.
Okay.
And the house was a train wreck. And part of that I knew when I was purchasing it, because I felt like I needed a project. I do my best thinking when I'm busy and when I'm working on something totally different from, the challenge at hand.
Right. Okay.
And so it was a total train wreck. My girlfriends were quite appalled when they came in to help me unpack.
Oh, wow.
And the woman who owned the house just before me, she had dementia, and she lived here longer than she really should have by herself. And so I set to making it my home. And I realized in that process that I had a lot of houses along the way. But even though this one is a train wreck from front to back, top to bottom, it's the first one in a very long time that has felt like my home.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because I am putting TLC into it and my soul. And I've had to learn all kinds of new skills because, as you know, March 2019, we went into complete lockdown. I had already ripped up my floors at that point and had to teach myself how to lay hardwood or deal with not having any floors for an unspecified amount of time.
Oh my goodness. And materials came harder to come by as well, didn't they? Just because of restrictions on stores and everything.
Yes. Well, I had the wood delivered prior to the shutdown because, of course,
lucky.
I didn't know. So it was already sitting here. And I thought, well, you can sit here and, bemoan the fact that you're in shutdown, or you can make your house look really nice during the shutdown. So by the time it opens, it doesn't look like a train wreck. So that was the route that I decided to take. And honestly, I think it kept me sane.
Fair enough.
During that first time, I was in a strange city where I had some friends, but not a ton of friends. And they're all at the other side of the city. And, we're all trying to do our best and do the stay-at-home order. And so I didn't see anyone for months. And if you want some introspection time, be by yourself for months in a new city where you really only go to the grocery store and back again.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder how popular silence retreats are now, because we all feel like we've put ourselves through them, bit in our own front room.
I can tell you that I used to adore those. Now you couldn't pay me enough to go to one. I remember one day in March, and it was warm, but still that gray, icky winter. And I remember sitting in my living room going, for the love of God, I just need to see another human being.
Yeah.
And I stood out on the side of the road just so I could watch people and, see faces and, know that the world was still turning out there. And I started taking a drive every day with the top down to get some vitamin D and the heat full bore, and just driving around my neck of the woods going, yep, there's a person, the world is still here. It's all good. And I was doing that while building one of my current businesses. And I started to develop a love of new things that would never have occurred to me to even try before.
Such as?
And so, I love doing home renos. I have done everything myself so far, with the exception of some lighting, because I don't trust myself with electricity. I think that's a little bit
Fair
scary.
enough. I think there's some legal requirement there too, isn't there?
Well, apparently you can do it if it's in your own home. I just don't want to live in the home that I've done the electricity in, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. So I've discovered that. I've discovered a love of woodworking, which I think is fascinating because I grew up watching my father, who is a master woodworker, build things and always tackling new projects and just kind of sitting down and figuring it out. And, when I started learning from him years ago, just the basics of home maintenance, because he believed that a woman should always be able to take care of her own home. She shouldn't have to rely on hiring people.
Yep.
And thanks, Dad. Appreciate that. Because some of it has come in very handy. Exactly. But I started looking around going, I really need some beautiful patio furniture, and I couldn't find anything that I really loved. And so I kind of sat down one day and went, maybe you should build some. And so I taught myself how to build the beautiful patio furniture that I now have. And it, in developing those new skills, I think often by the time we get to our 50s, we've forgotten the joy of learning and learning something new and being a beginner and giving yourself permission to, pardon my French, just suck at it for a little while until you learn, how to do better.
Yep.
And it's both humbling to really suck at something, but it's also very freeing. Yeah. Because you are literally giving yourself permission to, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think for me, in this whole pandemic of 2 years of shutdown, I am a high achieving A-type personality, impatient, get things done yesterday. Why isn't it already done? And I learned to say, it is what it is, Trace. It'll be what it'll be, and it'll be what it'll be when it will be. Stop trying to push water up a hill.
Oh my goodness. People meditate on top of mountains for years in order to learn that. So it's fantastic that you've come to that level of acceptance.
It was really quite shocking to myself, to be perfectly honest. As I was sitting in my living room with half the wood done, but too physically exhausted to carry on, going, oh my God, Trace, like you are in your mid-50s. Holy geez, I would not have chosen to do that had I known the physical exhaustion. Yeah. And yet the physical exhaustion allowed for my personal and spiritual growth into, it just is. You are tired. You need to take care of you now. Yeah. And so I spent a great deal of time taking care of me from the inside out and just learning to be patient with myself and saying, it will be okay. Yeah. Except for the few days that I sat in the middle of the living room going, what was I thinking? And just, crying for hours at a time.
Yeah, fair enough. But it moves through the process.
Well, absolutely. And sometimes when you're in the middle of the crisis, you can't actually see that you're not in the crisis. You're actually in the middle of a transformation. Oh, and they both hurt and they're both uncomfortable. Coming out the other side, it just takes a little bit of time and some patience. And I've always been a big believer on giving others grace. And this year has given me permission to give myself grace.
Which is true courage.
It didn't feel brave.
No, I know scary. It doesn't feel brave when you're in it.
Yeah.
But there is no greater grace than actually appreciating that what you've done has taken courage.
Yeah. And, so often because I am that A-type person, people have said to me my entire life, oh my gosh, you're so brave. And it never actually occurred to me that I was just doing me.
You just doing
right?
you.
Like this. Yeah, this is just who I am. And it wasn't until the pandemic hit that I kind of went, wow, you do have a rather large set, Trace. Like you are kind of brave. Like you're trying all this stuff and some of it you're failing miserably. I learned to ask for help when I need it.
That's huge.
Oh, it was massive for me.
Yeah.
And, my neighbors now know me very well because I am no longer afraid of going and knocking on their door going, could use a little assistance. Do you think you could help me out? And I think the biggest thing that I learned is when you ask for help, it gives someone else the opportunity to give you grace.
Seriously. Yeah.
I've always been the helper. I've never been the helped.
See, that's saying there is no shame in actually admitting that you cannot change the world on your own.
No.
And yet, especially if you've been in the corporate world and you're fighting your way to the top kind of thing, there it's almost seen as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
You should
absolutely
be able to do all of this on your own. And it's not real.
No, it's a totally unrealistic expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And we accomplish more when we're together.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Right. And so much quicker.
Absolutely. And it creates community, which is something that has become truly important in my world, is creating that community, a community that is safe, a community that is accepting, no matter where you're at, you should be accepted for where you're at. Mm-hmm. And, I've been at places that weren't so pretty to watch from the outside. But on the inside, that transition has been beautiful. And some people have been really accepting of that, and some people not so much. And I just choose to not have those people in my personal community at this time. Yeah. It's not healthy for me. Mm-hmm. I've learned to put myself first in terms of I need to do what's right for me.
Yeah,
and you can either support it or, just step aside until either you are, or just keep stepping aside.
I mean, if you think about the businesses that you've had in the past, and obviously I don't know about the corporate side because we met more through when you've been doing the sort of marketing and direct sales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you think about how many people you have supported over the years, when you think about sort of karma and yin and yang and, the balance of things, there had to come a time at some stage when you would need to ask for support. Mm-hmm. And so maybe this is the time. So that's just the coming into balance. It was going to happen at some stage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Direct sales is a great teacher for things like that, because
it's a great teacher for many things, I believe.
100%. They say if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with a team. And I 100% believe that. And I think that there are people all over the world that are just looking for that tribe that accepts them for where they're at and says, yeah, we're not leaving you behind. Let's go. And locking arms with people and making a difference for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it's been ups and downs and a heck of a journey, and a huge, big self-learning journey as well.
Huge.
Yeah. And I really want to thank you for being open and honest about that, because that takes courage in itself. So now that you've been through that, the caterpillar cocoon and the goo, as they say, what is coming out of the other side in your shiny, bright future that you went through all of this to create?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that I've got some things in the works that are still a little bit under wraps at this moment. But
that's exciting. That sounds like an adventure.
I know. I've got a few things percolating. Okay. And, I don't ever like to talk about the percolation before it's happening, because for me, something has to feel right. Yep. Much like waking up in October and saying, I have to sell this house. This is kind of the same thing. I'm on that journey and waiting for this is the right fit for you. This is absolutely the next thing that you are going to do. But what I've learned out of all of it is that you can't put your career first. You have to put yourself first and your career will follow.
Nice.
And, I learned that when I was 24. My boss, who was a wonderful mentor to me, Bob Bailey, told me when I was 24, do what you love and you'll never work another day in your life. But I was raised by a family that believed in hard work, and that was just foreign to me. So I heard him saying it, and I remember thinking at 24, well, yeah, you own the company. Of course you could say that.
Exactly.
But here I am at the ripe old age of 50 something, not sharing what, 50 something, saying, you need to allow that to evolve into something that you're not going to spend the rest of your life doing and waiting for your life to start. You have to live your life and allow everything else to come along with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a little bit more time than you really want. But you can't push the water up a hill.
Yeah.
That's my biggest learning. You can't push the water up the hill. You can make it go a little bit faster when you're pushing with a team, but you have to wait for things to hatch, and you have to wait for the chrysalis to open to say, yep, this is my time.
Yeah. Fantastic. So where are you with the house now? Because you've obviously invested a lot of time and energy into that. Are you happy with how home feels now?
It has evolved beautifully, I will say.
Congratulations.
Yes, I'm sitting in my living room, which is my favorite room of my house. My office area is almost done. I've been working on a project with that, and I've made a very unique countertop to go with that. So you can stay tuned on Facebook. Hopefully I'll be unveiling it in the next couple of weeks. We've had a few, wow, shouldn't have done that.
Oh, really?
My neighbors love walking past my garage because they consider it they walk by going, ooh, toil and trouble is happening in Tracy's garage. What are you building? And I usually say, not 100% sure. Stop back in a couple hours and you can see.
Yeah.
But they always ask, like, how do you know how to do this? And I usually say, I have no idea. And this is my first time, and I'm just going to try it. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
Really. So every room at the front half of the house, I decided that for my own A-type sanity, that I would do the front half of the house, which is the public area. I would do that first from the interior. I'm not going to do exterior probably until next year. So people often will come in now and go, wow, I did not expect it to look like this from the outside. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Okay, so hold on a second. Is that not the most beautiful metaphor for what you've been going through?
100%. It just kind of makes me laugh every time. It's like, yep, this is an inside job.
Yeah, perfect.
This is an inside job. So we're getting there. I still don't let anyone in the back half of my house, but the front half. Exactly, right? I'm like, yep, nobody needs to see that part. Enough people saw it when it was an absolute disaster when I first moved in. But I think the important part is it feels like home. And every square inch of this front half of the house has me invested in it. And that just feels great.
Wow. That is awesome. That's very, very good. Cool. So you're documenting some of your new journey and doing your new unveiling when it's ready. You're going to be doing that on Facebook. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So where can people, if people have enjoyed your journey and been inspired by what you've shared with us today, how can they find you, Tracy?
They can actually follow my personal page. I make it public. It's just Tracy Bowen, Tracy.
Okay. Tracy and Bowen, Tracy Bowen. Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. So I know that we have lots of projects on the go at the moment, so we're keeping this succinct and together.
Excellent.
Excellent. So if I'm just going to ask you to leave on a parting note, what would be kind of your words of advice if people feel right now they are heading into the chrysalis goo, or they are stuck in the middle of the sitting room with the tears going, oh my God, I don't know what's going to come out at the other side. What would you advise? What would you say?
2 years ago, I would have said push through.
Right.
And now I'll say, sit in the goo. Sit in the goo and just go, yep, this is a pretty darn gooey situation we got happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to keep moving at my pace and give yourself grace. Give yourself grace.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us today. I really appreciate it, Tracy. And I'm very excited to see what you will be revealing and unveiling over time as it feels right to do it.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to sharing.
Yes, very cool. Okay, so just to close up the episode today, if you've enjoyed what you've heard today and you feel that it will inspire other ladies just like you, please go to soulfuladventureliving.com, to my website, or on Facebook at Lindsay de Swart, and you'll be able to see the episode and to share Tracy's episode. And then also please go and take a look at Tracy Bowen's Facebook page. So thank you for sharing with us, Tracy.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Take care.